Hi, this is Captain Andrew from Sailor's Delight Back Bay Fishing of Wildwood, New Jersey. And I'm welcoming you to one of our segments called Fish Stories, where I give everybody a lowdown and entertaining breakdown of my life's experiences in both the fishing and merchant marine world. Now, some of the names and locations have been changed for privacy reasons, but I assure you that
Now,
everything
today
I'm
on
about
this
to tell
episode
you
of Fish
is the
Stories,
truth
I'm
as
going
I
to
saw it.
explain to everyone why I prefer the Back Bay fishing world as opposed to the offshore fishing world. And I will lead into a story of international fishing that ended up with my entire crew being reprimanded from the home office back in Dubai. Now, everyone knows that I spend my time these days fishing the Back Bay waters, but it wasn't always that way. Now, I grew up on party boats and have fished offshore. Bottom fishing on sun topwater was always fun, but the idea of offshore fishing for tuna and billfish just never really interested me. I always felt like the angler had an overwhelming advantage by using overclassed rods and reels and the advantage of being able to chase a fish with the boat. That is partly why I use light to medium action tackle for the rental rods on board my Sailor's Delight and the Sailor's Delight 2. Now, I will always enjoy the thrill of shallow water fishing because you have such a huge variety of fish you can target. Plus, in the shallow water, a fish is going to be more naturally inclined to run for the horizon and really fight than it is going to be just to barrel down to the bottom. Now, this still holds true today, but there is a caveat to that. That on rare occasions I do go offshore and I do grab a pair of leather gloves because I have learned to hand line. That's right, hand lining mahi, tuna, and wahoo. I've caught them all on hand line. I've never caught one on a rod and reel, and frankly, I don't have the desire to. Now, my first mahi was caught on board a tug I was working on between Jacksonville and San Juan. We would troll skirted lures behind us at a leisurely 8 knots. To the lure would be around 75 yards of high test fluorocarbon whipped into about another 100 yards of paracord. The paracord would be shackled to black bungees, which would be then shackled to the tug. The bungees would sort of act like the same shock absorber that a fishing rod would. We would troll from Florida to Puerto Rico, and this was the way I caught my first handline mahi, and actually my first wahoo as well. You would hear the bungees pop when the fish would hit the line, and then you would throw on some gloves and you would hand haul your catch in. Now, because we were under tow, we could not slow down, otherwise the barge would run us over, so you had to hand haul your fish at the 8 knots. Eventually, the fish would get tired and it would come up to the surface, and then it was just up to you fighting water resistance and sharks. That way, you could get the fish alongside the boat, and because we didn't have any gaffs, it was a crapshoot. You had to haul the fish up the 5 to 6 foot in one foul swoop, hoping it didn't pop off. And honestly, thinking back on it, I don't know that we ever lost a fish that way. Now, even though we all had fishing licenses, this was a big no-no for the company, as fishing was prohibited. So we would hide. The reason we didn't have fishing rods, the reason why we would use bungees and everything, that's because we could hide them well. I mean, how can you tell a sailor not to go fishing? That's downright despicable. So I applied this newfound knowledge anywhere I would work. However, things changed when I went back to sailing internationally. Uh, the international world, when it comes to fishing, is a lot more relaxed than it is here in the States, but there was, local rules you had to follow. So it was often not smart to travel with fishing gear. Uh, Plus, there was a company reputation. Now, I was working as a second officer for a company. The company doesn't exist anymore, but it was based out of Dubai, and its motto was Explore Green. Now, to a sarcastic wise ass who loves finding loopholes, kind of like myself, I would assume catching and eating fish in an artisanal manner would be acceptable. Let's just say I was wrong. So, the one instance that comes to mind, which was probably the big instance, uh, was we were working off of West Africa, off of Senegal to be specific. And we were underway. We were making, the traditional 4.5 knots because we were in seismic operations. And about 10:30 or so at night, our German gun mechanic called me up and he says, "Paul Andrew, is there a fish outside?" And I looked over the side, and in the floodlights, I could see that we were being swarmed by. Well, I could tell that they were tuna. I couldn't specifically figure out what kind they were. They were footballs. They could have been blackfin, they could have been skipjack or little toonie. Uh, so our gun mechanic asked me where the fishing gear was, and he knew I had some hidden. And I told him how to tie it up, and Not more than 10 minutes later, he comes walking up to the bridge, and he had a little toonie. You may want to Google it if you're not familiar with it. It's similar to our bonita or albacore. Delicious fish. And I was shocked. I said, "Oh, congratulations, Pat. What are you going to do with it?" And he didn't know how to clean it. So I told him, "Look, I'll go ahead and clean it when I get off my shift." Well, in classic German efficiency, this gun mechanic decided to start recruiting everybody that was off shift that was still awake. And they then proceeded to make more hand lines, and they started jigging out the little holes in the side of the ship. And they had a very effective processing line where they were taking a 5-gallon bucket filled with ice, kind of like I told them, but they industrialized it. So there was 5 or 6 buckets filled with ice, and you had 2 or 3 guys that were hand lining tuna fish in. You had 2 or 3 more guys that were taking the fish across the deck back to the buckets of ice and popping the gills. You had 2, 3 more guys who were then taking the fish to the galley and stacking them, where then they expected me to clean all the fish when I got off shift. Needless to say, when I got off shift, I was expecting to go down to have to clean 1 or 2 fish and then have the joy of being able to go out and catch a fish myself. Instead, I came down to the deck to find a pile of 67 little toonie and skipjack sitting there waiting for me to be all fished, all cleaned. So what I did is I took the time and I separated the fish by size. I staked some of them. I kept some of them whole for the grill, and I filleted some of the other smaller ones out. It was a good time. Of course, as would happen, somebody had taken the time to break out the camera and start taking pictures, and before you know it, the pictures ended up on Facebook, and before you know it, the company had found out. And I'll paraphrase their retribution, but essentially there was an instant no fishing order. They thought it went without saying given the company's environmental stance, but me being me, pointed out to my captain that there was no words in the company manual there saying that fishing was strictly prohibited. Needless to say, that Monday that was instantly added to the fleet. Yeah, well, there's 2 lessons there. You cover your ass and make sure nobody's taking pictures next time. But on a side note, we did the math, and with all the fish that we caught and all the supplement, we actually saved the company about $1,500 a day in food bill, but they didn't see the benefit there. But well, that's it. That's my fish story for the day. It always makes me chuckle. The mental images and some of the pictures here I'll include really kind of drive it home. It's one of them stories off the water you can never forget. Tight lines and good fishing. Now, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy my channel here. And if you do, please don't hesitate to like and subscribe, and feel free to leave me comments. I do enjoy all sorts of feedback, both positive and negative, and don't be afraid to share. Thank you very much. Tight lines and good fishing.